This show is intended to entertain, educate, inspire, and support you on your personal journey. I am not a medical doctor and do not offer any professional health or medical advice. While the guest on this show is a health professional, each person is different, and the advice shared in this show is general in nature and should not substitute for you seeking guidance for your specific situation from a qualified health professional of your choosing. We are made of the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we tell each other, and the stories we hold too tightly. If it sounds familiar, it actually felt very familiar when I read it in this book, Held Together by Dr. Rebecca Thompson. Because each week we gather here around my grandmother's kitchen table, we have tea, and we tell stories. We tell stories about how we can heal and how that narrative is shaping our life going forward. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Rebecca Thompson, and her book, Held Together, weaves together the stories of women's grief, whether that's infertility, pregnancy, loss, chronic illness, adoption, and grief all together, not unlike this podcast. And today, she's going to give us some advice from the lens of medicine and motherhood. You're going to learn what grief looks like in your body, why you may get sick more easily after a major grief incident. Is there such a thing as broken heart syndrome? And how the stories we tell ourselves either deepen our suffering or maybe can, in a way, help to integrate it. Dr. Thompson, I'm so glad you're here today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've been really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. And everybody can see, I tabbed this book up. It is such a wealth of information and healing. And being a literature major, I loved the way you just put the narrative together, how you start with your story, but then you weave in all these other beautiful stories of resilience and hope and how they got through things. So let's start there. So you start with the statement, we're made of the stories we tell ourselves. And when I read that, I felt like the breath was knocked out of me because it was such a line that resonated deeply with me because I love stories. So what did you mean when you wrote that?
Well, I think that really does sum up what this whole project has been about. And it came from the origin of my trying to understand what had happened to me. When I was sort of finishing up the first level of my training, finishing up residency, about to become a new attending, my husband and I had a string of pregnancy complications. We went through this together. And just as we were thinking about starting a family, everything went sideways. And I suddenly found myself a patient. But even though at that moment, being thrown on the other side of things, used to being the one helping others navigate these kinds of challenges, I knew that I needed to make something bigger out of all this than my own struggles, right? And I wasn't able to do it right away. That, we'll talk more about the passage of time and how that changes things. And that was a huge part of this story. But I knew I wanted whatever I'd been through to help someone else. And I started to notice the stories of the women all around me. And I realized, well, it's not just the stories we tell ourselves, but the stories we tell each other. How can we bring this into a community and create a kind of narrative about these intersections and the ways that we weave our story together, the ways that we hold everything as one cloth and make purpose from that.
I love that. Because I thought it was so interesting because in the book, you said that the higher the quality of a survivor's narrative, the less severe the suffering is. And I think if you had talked to me this time last year, I would not have known or appreciated how accurate that statement is, because in creating this podcast and talking with other people and feeling safe to share about my mom, to share even with my colleagues who work on this show, that today is a heavy grief day for me, that has been freeing and liberating in a way that I didn't expect when I first pitched this kind of wacky idea
Mm.
about like,
Hmm.
let's create a space for this.
Yeah, it really can define how we understand ourselves and our stories, and that part of self, not just the story, but the identity, right? So I think that narrative can really help us move away from a sense of being a victim and understand ourselves more as survivors, things we've gotten through. And as you alluded to, there really is research on this. And it's going back, years and years. I remember this from medical school in those early residency days, so 20 plus years ago, that it works both ways. So if we have a more cohesive narrative about what we've processed, what those experiences mean, it becomes more helpful to us. It's, rather than just feeling lost and kind of mired in this maze of jumbled challenges, if we've made something cohesive and coherent out of it. But it's also about the act of creating the narrative,
Mm.
like what you're doing with your work, with the podcast, with having these kinds of conversations with the women in your community and people in your community. It's how did we get there? How did we make the narrative? What did we use to create it? And that really can drive our healing and our resilience because it gives us more self-agency, right? We
Yeah.
start with the sense of maybe why me? And as we learn about other stories and we look deeper into our own and see the repercussions as we move forward, we can move into a place sometimes, hopefully, of why not me? Why anyone? Like, I'm not alone. We're all dealing with something.
So let's talk about the women that you tell their stories in this book. How did you? I was so fascinated by this. So you tell a little bit, and you, of course, change some privacy for privacy concerns. But in that healing space of them telling their story, did you sit down with them? Did you ask them to journal? And did you see a transformation after you took their story, amalgamated it into this beautiful book, and then they were able to read it? Can you give us kind of behind the scenes about what happened after in the creation of this book and how you saw that? Because I found with reading it, I wanted to know, where are they now? And how did this book, because I know it helped them. I felt that in my soul, but tell me how it helped them.
Yeah. So two levels of that question. So like sort of the process and where they are now. So in terms of the process, and thank you for pointing this out, because I do really think it was an unusual process, and I'm so grateful for the way that we did it. It was so rewarding, and I hope for everyone involved as well. These are all people that I know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go out saying I need a story about adoption, about surrogacy, about foster parenthood, about step parenthood. There was none of that. These are just organically brought together people that I'm so fortunate to already have in my lives, from patients and medical colleagues that I've worked with to friends who I may have known for 30 plus years, but now their stories look pretty different to me with this new lens, right?
Sure.
And for every one of them, it was a collaborative effort. Now, that I want to set it apart from an anthology. I didn't say to anybody, go write down your story and I'm going to take it and sort of lightly edit it and just put them all together. I set out planning and wanting, we were able to do this, to really work with each woman to find those, pull them out and craft the most compelling version of her narrative that we could. And so whether, depending whether she lived near me or far, I know you had some of your friends you talked about live down the street and some live 6 hours away, and they come together and you share your stories. And it was kind of like that. So some of them are local to me. We might go out for a walk or sit down in a coffee shop and just talk for hours. And everything was recorded with her permission. Some of them were on the phone if we're across time zones or continents. There are people who don't, in different countries. So we had to navigate that, to get up at 4 a.m, things like that to connect. But in all cases, we recorded the conversations, usually 2-3 hours at a time over many different sessions, multiple sessions over several years for each given woman. The whole project took about just over 10 years.
Wow.
And then I would take these recordings and listen to them, take notes out of them, transcribe portions, and try to capture her voice. So even though in a way, I sort of wrote, I'm putting air quotes here, wrote the stories, I'm just feel like I'm shepherding them.
Mm.
I'm helping craft them, and I'm helping lift up her voice. So then, along with that, you mentioned journaling. Some of them, people had some writings they'd done, journal entries, emails to friends and family to update them in, challenging times they shared with me. And I would try to weave those in when I could, or I might say, we talked about this and that, but I don't feel like I understand how you felt when this was happening, or the details. Like, describe the room you were
Hmm.
in this moment. And I'd ask them to fill things in, and then I would integrate them. And we went back and forth over countless iterations over these years.
Sure.
And so it really was a collaborative process. And so that's the kind of behind the scenes of how it came together. But your question of where they are now, I think that parallels this research on the narrative, right? It's about the narrative you've created, and that was how we created the narrative, but it's about how you got there and like what it meant to you. And many of them said to me, kind of as we got through and got toward the end of the actual capturing the
Hmm.
story, I just don't think I'd ever really understood my story in this way or processed it in a way that I feel now. I'm never going to get over it. I have to integrate it into my life, but I can now move past it or beyond it in a way where I really can make it just part of my story and I can move ahead.
Mm.
And that was really beautiful
I
to
mean, what
feel.
a
Many, many.
Yeah, I mean, what a gift, because you are a doctor in the traditional sense. And,
Mm-hmm,
one thing I noticed in the book was these contrasts that exist, because
mm-hmm,
sick versus well, coping versus not coping,
mm-hmm,
healing versus grieving. I find myself
mm-hmm,
now in this space where I really kind of shun away from that idea of I'm healing. Um,
mm-hmm,
I guess I am, but for me, I feel like I'm learning. I don't like the word healing right now for me. It might be fine for others. Blame it on being a transactional attorney that words matter to me. But right now, I feel like what feels more authentic to me is that I am in a space where I am integrating this grief into my life. Um, and so what you talk about them being able to like have it part of them by telling the story, I think is very true for me too. So one
I
thing I
like that.
noticed in your book that there's a lot of time references, and I don't know if you know or if that was
Mm-hmm,
intentional, but I guess it's by the nature of a pregnancy is usually 9 months or whatever, but there were a lot of time
mm-hmm,
markers. Time kept coming up, whether it had been 1 month, 2 months, 6 weeks. It took this long for the adoption. It took this, like, there was all this time.
yeah, great
And
point.
it's, I think it jumped out with me because, and I still do it every month on the 23rd. I know it's the 23rd. My body knows it's the 23rd before my brain even realizes it. And I think,
Yeah.
oh, and as we're recording this, it's just 15 months and 2 days. I wake up and I think
Mm-hmm,
it's been this amount of time, or it's been this many weeks, and I still mark that grief incident with time. Do you find that that's normal and healthy? What's your opinion on that?
yeah. I do think it's really normal.
Yeah.
We're taught to think in these terms in family life. I mean, whether it's marking anniversaries of happy things or losses, we think of dates, we mark our calendars, we look ahead to events like weddings and even memorials and funerals and things. We plan for things. And then if we build our families through pregnancy, we mark the weeks, the days, the months. If however we build our families, we have all these milestones. Our society is so much about milestones. So I think it's only natural that we measure our memories in these ways too. Um, but it's also interesting as time passes, there's that side of things. Like, the more experiences we accumulate, the more any one experience or moment is sort of balanced by other experiences. And so what I
Hmm.
mean by this is, like, okay, it's analogous to we think about when we're little. Say you're 5 years old. A year is like a lifetime. You cannot imagine if someone says to you, you have to wait a year for something. It's like, well, that's never going to happen,
Right.
right?
That's
It's 20% of
20%.
your
Right.
life,
Exactly. When you're
right?
5. Yeah.
But by the time you're in your 50s, it's 2% a year.
I
The
love this
years just
theory.
like fly
I
by.
love that you're sharing this because I've shared this theory so many times with friends and they look at me like I have 3 heads because I'm like, no, no, think about it. Like, that's why it feels like time's moving faster is because of this percentage
Right.
thing. Yeah.
It's just math.
Right. It's just,
And there's this factor of dilution, right? Just by the effect of time passing and experiences accumulating, it has a way of showing us the bigger picture, the bigger narrative, like, for better and for worse, right? So I was thinking about, Rand, the fact that you shared so graciously that you were a rainbow baby,
hmm.
right? And your mom's experience, if she's like most parents who lose a baby or a child, and it's not my place to assume anyone's experience here because I have not been through that, but no matter how else she and your family experienced parenthood after that, she was never going to forget that child, right?
No.
That no time was going to change. There was no passage of time that was going to take away the fact that that's part of who she was as a parent, as a person, as a mom. And as you and your siblings came along, that child then became part of a bigger story.
Mm,
The child will never be lost or forgotten, but they weren't the only part of the story anymore.
yeah. So do you think that time heals?
No. I mean, I think, okay, that's up to each individual to answer,
Sure.
but my reaction, very quicker, is absolutely not. I mean, it's more about, again, a concept I know you've talked about, but the idea of reshaping that
Hmm.
resonates a lot more with me. We don't want to go back to who we were. I do think we can have a wider lens on
Hmm.
things and a broader perspective, both sort of on our individual lives and as one person in among the lives of many. But we don't want to go back to being pre-grief lawyer Barbie. We want to
Yeah.
be the disco ball. We want to stay in that imperfect, put back together piece. And I know you read Eriko's chapter about kintsugi and putting the pieces
Hmm.
back together into something that was never really broken.
Yeah.
It was just it just has become something different. Yeah. So
I love
no,
that you
I think it's
have
change.
that story in there because if you've listened to the episode, Mimosas, Moo-Moos, and the Moms Who Hold Me
Yes,
Together, my
I
friend Rachel
have.
brings forth that idea too, which I thought
Yeah.
was such, again, like such good alignment that I said, oh, well,
Yeah.
this is the doctor I need to talk to. So I love hearing that you agree with me. It makes me feel better that time doesn't heal because um, it started to feel to me like one of those well-meaning cliches that people throw out when they
Yeah.
don't really want to sit with you in that uncomfortable space, or they just want you to revert back to who you were, or handle things the way you would. And what I'm
Hmm.
finding is embracing the fact that, much like a toddler, I'm getting my legs about me. And I feel sometimes in
Mm.
a lot of ways that when my mom passed on, she passed on some of her sass and grit to me, or at least I feel like I should carry that legacy on, that
Yeah.
Miss Sharon wasn't, suffered no fools. And so I find myself having less tolerance for just
Yeah.
the, I don't know really the word to put to it, but the things that don't hold the gravity of so many things that seemed like a big deal before are no longer a big deal to me. And I have little tolerance for things that are just
Hmm.
yang yanny type things.
Yeah. And it's not that there was anything wrong with having any focus on those things in the past. I mean, that was what you knew before, right? You
Sure.
know something different now. And I love when you've talked in the past about, and now you said you didn't want to be healing, but you said healing, how you're not healing because you're broken. You're healing to become this new version of
Yeah.
yourself. And that I think that sums it up. It's not about healing to go backward, right?
Mm,
Healing almost implies like reverting to a state we used to be in, but it's like we're evolving to move forward, you know?
Evolving. Oh, I love that word. That's beautiful.
Mhm.
So let's talk about just kind of rapid fire this idea of grief in your body, because right
Mhm,
after my
mhm.
mom passed, I had a lot of people, fortunate I have friends who are doctors, say, Ryan, you really need to take your vitamin C. You really need to watch your immune system. People get sick and really get kind of bogged down in the weeks and months after a big grief
Yeah.
incident. So tell me, what is that? I trust that they were being accurate and helpful. So why are bereaved people more likely to get sick?
Yeah, well, some of those things sounded accurate, some less so, but
Okay.
what we know, specific vitamins, we can argue the merits. There have been
Sure.
studies back and forth, but in the big picture, more importantly, in the big picture, right? So immune suppression after loss is real.
Okay.
And this, I think it's for a few different reasons. I mean, at the core, just a disruption in your life can really change your behavior in
Mm,
ways that make it much harder to stay healthy. So it may, whatever the loss is, it may disrupt your eating patterns, your sleeping, exercise, your ability to do the work, whether employment or just the work of your life that gives
sure.
you a sense of meaning and purpose. It can really disrupt everything for you. So that, of course, as your foundations are shaken, that can cause us to become depressed or anxious either in the moment or leading to longer term mental health challenges depending on how we process and try to integrate those experiences into our lives. um, on a kind of more detailed scientific level, this is probably what your friends were alluding to in terms of do this, not that, take
Hmm.
this supplement or that. Our bodies may initially release a lot of cortisol.
Okay.
This is known as sort of the stress hormone. It's trying to protect us from stress. And in small initial bursts, that can be really helpful. That can kind of limit inflammation and help us kind of rally. But the problem is that over time, like so many things, if we have kind of unchecked levels, our bodies adapt, right? We get used to that elevated level and then we become less sensitive to
Mm,
the thing. So our bodies will then kind of ramp it up and allow for more inflammation if this persists over time. And then that leads to a weakened immune system. So that's sort of one of the science facts behind that.
yeah.
This ties into so the fight or flight system, everyone has heard of
Hmm.
that. And if initially we have this big rush of adrenaline and then cortisol to follow and maintain this heightened level of activation, if you will, um, it really affects every system in the body. It
Mm,
affects your kind of your blood pressure and sleep wake cycle, like we've alluded to. It affects your sugar metabolism. So it affects just like how you're processing what comes into your body, what goes out, and how you're interacting with the world. So it's a really real scientific phenomenon for sure.
yeah. So what I'm hearing for the non-scientist here and the non-scientists who are listening is there are some things that we can do that will help, but really your
Hmm.
body is going to have a physical reaction based on
Yeah.
cortisol, and a lot of that is not within your control.
Yeah. And it'll range.
Hmm.
People will have different levels of that kind of effect
Okay.
that their bodies create, depending on what the loss is, how they feel about it, how much it means to them. It's a huge, like everything, like you said before about those false dichotomies of well versus sick, and it's a continuum, right? There's no dichotomy of you have a reaction or you don't. It's a range.
Yeah, I feel like even for me, I'm a knock on wood very healthy person. I get sick maybe once every 18 months, every 2 years, but this my mom had been past a year and pretty immediately I contracted RSV, and it was the sickest I had been in 20 years. And I think, a virus is a virus. I obviously have a grade school child, like viruses are going to come into our house. But I think one reason was I was just in this state, I got through the holidays. I
Right.
got through that 1 year, and then my body was just, I think it didn't help me that I had been going, and then I ran across a virus, and it was like, and now you're going to rest,
Yep.
Diane.
And forced rest for sure.
Forced rest for sure.
Hmm.
And it's so interesting. I have to share this really sweet story about my mother because, and the reason I know it had been 20 years since I had been that sick is when I was right out of college, living in my first apartment, I contracted bronchitis or developed bronchitis.
Hmm.
And, you know, being a big girl, 22, I could take care of myself. And I had missed work for a couple of days because I worked
Hmm.
for a few years before I went to law school. And my mom called to check on me and she said, "You don't sound well." I'm like, "I'm fine." And, you know, and then I went back to sleep. And the next thing I knew, she was pounding on my door. She had driven 3.5 hours and
Oh.
she showed up with groceries and to take care of me because she said, "I could just tell in your voice that you were really sick and you needed me here to
Hmm.
take care of you." And it's, it was unfortunate I got sick as I did several weeks ago, but it also brought back a memory of her that I hadn't
Hmm.
thought about in 20 years because that was the last time I remember being really sick was um, she was there for me. So um, I guess
That's
if you're
beautiful.
listening, if you have adult children, still show up for them if they're sick. They still need you and they will appreciate it. So, I also heard about this idea of broken heart syndrome. What is that,
Mhm.
and is that a real thing?
Yeah, there's a real thing. It's also called Takotsubo cardiomyopathy.
Oh, that's a big word.
And
I'm not going to try
yeah,
that one.
so that's okay. It's a Japanese word because so this will bring us back to kintsugi and the idea of the vessels that are mended. So that word alludes to this Japanese pot, fishing pot,
Mhm.
fisherman's pot to catch an octopus, because the way the heart develops a defect, essentially a temporary defect, it looks like the shape of this pot. But backing up, so with extreme stress, people can develop actual physical changes in their heart muscle
Mm.
and in the blood vessels, or both. Um, Cardiomyopathy, just to break that word down, cardio, anything about the heart, myo is muscle,
Mhm.
and pathology, pathos, disease. Sadness, disease, depending on the origins there. But anything that's a pathy, that's going to be disease of the. So this is disease of the cardiac muscle. And essentially, in this form of cardiomyopathy, which is usually temporary, it prevents one of the ventricles, the left ventricle, from contracting effectively. Now, your heart needs to pump the blood, so it needs to
Mhm.
contract and relax. The systole, the diastole, these are the measurements you see on your blood pressure numbers. So it needs to do both of those well. And it can't contract as well if these muscles are temporarily damaged or kind of stunned, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, it can look really similar to a heart attack,
Mm.
but the difference is it's not caused by any blocked blood vessels. There are no blocked arteries. So if you took someone and did studies, you would see that there's no there's no blockage on like an angiography, which is the one where you put uh,
The round
contrast through
sticky
the veins
things.
to flow. Yeah, that one's different. We'll get to that. So you wouldn't have any blockage in the blood flow of the vessels.
Mhm.
You would see this dilation of the ventricle on like an ultrasound of the heart, what's called an echocardiogram. You would see that looking like the pot, the fisherman's pot,
Mhm.
bulging out from that bottom edge, which is called the apex of the heart. And on an EKG, which is the sticky things, on the little electrical signals of your heart, it might look very much like a heart attack. It
Mm.
would have some of the same electrical changes. Um, and again, most people recover from this within a few weeks. It's possible to die of a broken heart. That has been documented. It has happened,
Mm.
but most people recover within a few weeks. And really interestingly, about 90% of people who experience this are women in their 50s to 70s.
Really? So, what are
Uh-huh.
some signs that somebody might want to be on the lookout for? Because I always like leaving
Yeah.
listeners with takeaways or something that they can
Hmm.
share with a friend that, you're talking to a girlfriend who's going through grief, what are some things she might say that you would want to say, I think you need to go to the doctor, sis?
Okay, well, if it looks like a heart attack ever, always go to the emergency room
Mhm.
because women, what we can't know. Even if you had some recent grief that's huge and life altering, we can't say, well, it's just that your heart is hurting from that. She could also be having a heart attack. Please go. Like, don't
Sure.
hesitate. And women have less kind of classic textbook symptoms of heart attack. They might have the typical just like whole left arm kind of pain. They might have indigestion. It's now this is not to say that you have to panic every time you have a little indigestion and go to the ER, but just to have a higher sense of alert for yourself, for your female friends to say, maybe don't dismiss this right away. Like,
Yeah.
let's think a little deeper about if you should get checked out for this. Like, believe yourself, believe your story.
Yeah, I think, as women, we're so busy taking care of everyone else that we just
Mm-hmm.
put off
Mm-hmm.
taking care of ourselves. As I sit here talking with you with a sinus infection that is a result of the RSV I had. And I was like, oh, my ears kind
Yeah.
of feel funny, whatever. But, I finally went to the doctor yesterday. So let's talk a little bit about brain fog and accidents. Another
Mm-hmm.
thing, when I was fresh into grief and was reading and trying to logically make sense of what was happening, I ran across that people are more likely to get in car accidents. And so
Yep.
what's going on with the brain fog? And I even say
Mm-hmm.
sometimes now I say, "Oh, that's my grief brain," because I would be mid-sentence
Yeah.
talking about copyright law or music licensing or something I know really, really well, and it was like somebody turned the TV off. And tell
Yeah.
me, what is going on? What was going on in my body when that was happening?
Yeah. Gosh, and it's really making me think about how much Tina's chapter must have resonated with you when she
Yeah.
talked about losing her, let's just say, closest loved one, and how she felt like she'd had a head injury. And just that
Yeah.
fog, that how she described it, similar to her friend who had a head injury, resonates so much.
Mm.
But yes, there's documented increased risk of car crashes and various kinds of accidents. Um, Part of that is going to be just the physical fatigue that people have from the disruptions that we talked about earlier, the routines of sleep, nutrition, movement, all the things that get disrupted, right? There's distraction. You're thinking about what happened, and so you're not as
Mhm.
focused as you'd like to be on the task at hand. And then there's this cognitive impairment, this real like neurological brain fog. So reaction time truly can become measurably slower, and even at a level like comparable with driving impaired with drugs or alcohol. It really
Wow.
can be measured. There's like all these factors combined. And then brain fog, like what's happening neurologically. Um, Again, it's not all fully understood, but this expression generally refers to feeling of less clarity in our thinking, than what we might feel like we used to have or that we expect to have as our baseline. We can
Mhm.
tell something is off. It's harder to concentrate. We might struggle to find the right words. We forget things we used to remember easily, or we just feel like less effective
Mhm.
at tasks, or especially multitasking, less effective at juggling all the things that we are called to juggle as parents and people and professionals. Um, this can be from medical causes, like chemotherapy, autoimmune diseases, multiple sclerosis is one of the big ones for that. Vascular issues, infections, like you're talking about right now,
Mhm.
can also be from grief. It really can be from this emotional stress. It can manifest in a very similar biological, chemical way
Yeah.
to more medical stresses, if you will. Um, and again, it comes back to, in part, those are suppressing that immune system, dysregulating our stress responses, elevating cortisol levels. Like all of those things come into play for this as well. But I would say also, I'm thinking about this intersection and how, again, it's a continuum and it's
Mhm.
an interplay. It's not a dichotomy. It's not, well, we have a biological effect and then we have an emotional effect. These things are very intertwined. And these days, we're all dealing with like so many forms of grief as
Yeah.
communities, as individuals, as the world, as the planet. And there are so many medical vulnerabilities we're all dealing with right now.
Mm.
More vascular diseases, rising instances of autoimmune diseases, and rampant infections of all kinds, especially when we have kids in the house
Yeah.
bringing in things from school. And, one of the biggest causes over these last few years of brain fog has been COVID. And it's really changing our society. It's both past infections and ongoing. And so as a physician, I'll put in like a little public health plug here to encourage everyone to just minimize whatever they can do to kind of minimize their exposures, minimize that, because the the research is really emerging. We talk about the research of
Mhm.
how grief has affected us in accidents and how this affect, I'm looking back at 20 years ago from when I was studying these revolutionary ideas that came out. Well, the newest ideas here are about how viruses can really, at a population level, this is emerging, like it's really damaging our immune systems.
Mm.
It's really making it harder for us. You know, with measles, there's a known, like our immune systems are wiped out by getting measles. We forget even the vaccines we've had.
Mm.
It erases them. It's an immune amnesia. It's a real biological thing, and it's wild. And like, there's a fascinating study in the Lancet about this, about how long COVID has surpassed even asthma as the most common chronic childhood illness.
Wow.
So I just hope that we can do something. I worry we're not doing enough to protect the kids. Like we do all these things for clean water, and I hope we'll do more for clean air as we move forward. Like anything we can do to protect these immune systems, because they are what help us cope with grief in all its forms, to be resilient, to keep doing the work that matters.
Yeah. And I love how you have come back to this idea of it's a continuum, because
Mm.
one thing that resonated in your book, that again, you need to buy Held Together if you have, even if you have never experienced a huge grief experience. I think it's going to give you insights into how you approach people who have, because really in 2026, everybody's carrying around these big, heavy backpacks
Mhm.
that they don't talk about. And I believe that the way we make the world, our country, better is by being compassionate and
Mhm.
realizing that everybody's just really doing the best they can. And so, a quote from your book said, I would have never judged other women as harshly as I
Mhm.
judged myself. And that knocked the air out of me. That was the second quote that really knocked the air out of me, because um, even now I find myself, Ryan, why can't you just get it together? The negative committee meets in my head a lot. I'm I've now changed the language that I use. Instead of saying I'm having a bad grief day, because there's no good or bad, I say I'm having
Yeah.
a heavier or
Yeah.
or higher, like the idea of
Mhm.
ocean, like high tide and low tide sort of kind of resonated
Oh,
with
that's a
me.
great metaphor. Yeah, that's a great
Um,
metaphor for that.
Instead of bad, because I was like, I'm not bad.
Yeah.
I'm a woman wearing a lot of hats
Yeah.
and
Don't judge it.
trying
Hmm.
to do the best I can, and my best can look different from day to day. So does shame do anything to our nervous system or our health?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I think that it makes it really harder to take care of ourselves
Mm.
because it decreases that sense of self-worth and self-efficacy, right? But like you mentioned, I feel like sometimes looking outside of ourselves to see where our experiences fit in the bigger picture, that can really help, that curiosity about others'
Mhm.
experiences. I feel like the curiosity is the foundation. I mean, grief that we experience, it can really foster patience for others around us and a desire to understand their experiences. And when we do go into that, that's where I think we can we can bring that compassion back to ourselves too. You know, and I will say all of these stories, there are 21 others and myself, like all of us have been through something complicated. And yes, I think that people who understand some kind of grief and maybe have judged themselves harshly for that
Mhm.
grief will find comfort in these stories. But I really want to point out this is not a sad book.
It's
This
not.
is a
There's a lot of
really,
happy
really,
moments. Yeah.
yeah, and it's so like fiercely optimistic.
Hmm.
It's like, yeah, this happened and like I cannot change that, but I am going to make something of it and I'm not going to sit around feeling bad about it,
Hmm.
feeling shameful. I might start out with some shame
Yep.
or embarrassment or self-pity or pity for someone else, but I'm going to move into like, what can I take from this to feel empowered?
Yeah.
So I just want to point that out. It's like definitely not a book that you have to sit around reading to feel extra sad. It's like it's more kind of riding the emotional roller coaster with us and like going along with a
Yes.
friend to accompany her in this wide range of experiences.
Yes. I definitely, if you love the podcast, you will like this book because there are sad moments, but it's not
Right.
overall sad. There's
Right.
things I
Right.
think you can learn. There's hope, there's resilience, there's
Yeah.
inspiration. Um,
Yeah.
it's
Thanks.
it's it hits all the notes, as the young people say. So we talk about things that are out of our control, cortisol, things like
Mhm,
that. What are just, and I
mhm.
love people to have takeaways, what are just some basic things that people can do to show kindness towards their bodies when they're having a loss event?
Okay. Well, things that pop into my mind, I think are kind of three big categories on this one.
Okay.
So, and knowing there are no like easy or quick solutions, but taking care of your brain. So we've talked a lot
Okay.
about immune system and kind of cognitive functioning and how those intertwine. I think if you can keep up some of those consistent routines, even when you don't feel like it, go through the motions, the whole fake it till you make it thing has some good merit here,
Hmm.
including all of those foundations: healthy food, exercise, movement, nature, sunshine, like anything, what brings you joy. Like just go through it,
The
even
things we all kind of
write it.
instinctively know.
Yeah, yeah, write it down. Just hold yourself to it. Don't make decisions in the moment. Just like make a list and follow it if you have to without letting yourself say, I don't really feel like, nope, that's your assignment for the day. Like just do the
Hmm.
thing, go through the routine. Um, Things like doing puzzles can help kind of stimulate your brain in different ways. Puzzles, games, reading books, whatever you like to do that gives your brain some kind of a, let's say creative outlet, but it's not about having to produce something. It's about just engaging in some creative way that can really
Okay.
help kind of sharpen your nervous system a little bit in a way that can be soothing, but also like productive. Um, so that's kind of taking care of your brain. And then I would say being patient with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
really important. So allowing yourself extra time to complete tasks. This comes back to the driving safety thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do not rush. If you have to drive, maybe there's someone who can drive you somewhere. But if you have to drive yourself, allow yourself lots of extra time. Be more deliberate in your physical movement so you're not knocking things over, cutting yourself while washing dishes by breaking something in the sink. All these little things that we do that can turn bad really fast if we're not paying attention. Try to just slow down and be more mindful and like recognize your vulnerability at this moment.
Ooh,
And then
I needed
the
to hear
last,
this
yeah.
15 months ago because I'm thinking the my mom passed right before Thanksgiving, and that Christmas I
Yeah.
sliced a huge chunk out of my
Yes, it happens.
finger. Um,
But and it's the littlest thing. You're going about your day,
yeah,
and like your day is just stopped by something that like, how did I even let that happen? You feel so foolish, but it's so common. It's so
yeah,
you're so not alone.
yeah.
And then speaking of you're not alone, like the third thing I would say is when you're ready, like try to connect with others. It may not be yet, it may not be every day, but like for grief specifically about these kinds of losses of important people in our lives, talk to each other, reach out. Even the most introverted of us are not meant to hold it all by ourselves, right? So reconnect with others, but also stay connected to yourself. And
Yeah.
if you're not ready to open up to other people, if you are someone who likes to journal or write songs or poems or paint or do something to express yourself, great. If you feel like you want to think about and process your story, but you're not ready to share it, with the words aloud to
Mhm.
others, another thing I recommend to people is the way that we wrote this book. Take a handheld recorder, your phone, whatever, go on a walk, sit down with a cup of tea, and tell yourself the story.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to go anywhere, but take that time to connect with your own story more deeply too.
Yeah, I
Those
think
are the three.
yeah, I love all of those, and I love the fact that really embracing the idea of creating and telling your story just
Mm-hmm.
because. You don't have to turn it into a
Mm-hmm.
book. You don't have to turn it into a
Yeah.
podcast.
Nope.
You don't have to
Nope.
do anything with it that if it helps heal a part of you, that is
Mm-hmm.
the most valuable thing it can do. I
Yeah.
think as Americans, we're
Yeah.
always like, well, what's the purpose? How can I, do that?
Yeah.
And that it's okay if it doesn't do any of that. If it helps heal you and
Yeah.
make you a better parent, a better friend, a better spouse, like that's the value, better community
Yeah.
member.
It's the experience. It doesn't have to be a product.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was a better way, a more succinct way.
It's all
So,
good.
yeah. So tell people, what do you really hope readers take away from Held Together? And where can they find it and buy it?
Mm-hmm. I hope that people take away these messages of growth,
Mm,
that we move through things and we change. We aren't trying to go back to who we are. We want to see who we can become. And I hope that it helps other people when they're especially navigating loss, but honestly, like, what is life if not tiny loss every day? Expectations, disappointments, things that go not at all how we expected, like, again, a continuum. So I hope that people will take away like a greater belief in themselves,
mm,
but when they can't, when and a greater belief in themselves, but maybe even more so when they're in those moments where they can't believe in themselves, that they can feel a pull to look to the stories of others too,
mm.
because we all in this book, and everyone on your podcast talking about their stories, we all got through some of these incredibly difficult things, and we came out stronger, different, but stronger, put together into something more creative and more beautiful and more resilient on the other side. So you can too, because you're just one of us.
Yeah, we are all dust, right? And trying to
Right. That
figuring it
too.
out, figuring it out.
That too. Yeah, so you can get the book anywhere you get books, the usual. If you are so inclined, and it'd be great if anyone who has the financial means to go purchase the book, it's there are links on my website that are affiliate
Mhm.
links to Postpartum Support International, which is an amazing maternal and family mental health organization. And if you use the links there, designated as PSI affiliate links, it will send a portion of the proceeds to their work. And so I would super appreciate that if anybody wants to use those. But really, any way you can read it, you have links to get to find your own indie bookstore, where you can buy a signed copy from certain indie bookstores I have on my website. Request it from your libraries, share it with your friends. But I just really hope that this will be the kind of book, the kind of stories that people will want to take and press into the hands of their friends and say, oh, you just have to read this. I want to talk about it with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. So share your website,
Thank
please.
you. Oh yes, so it's just my full name, Rebecca N. Thompson.com. No MD, but use the middle initial there because there are lots of Rebecca Thompsons. Yeah, and everything is there. You can find all the podcasts, the links, the
Perfect.
reviews, the ways to message me. If you have a book club you want me to come visit with you and chat for a little bit at the end of your book club, happy to do that on Zoom. Be in
Perfect.
touch.
And she's on Instagram too. And so I will
Mm-hmm.
definitely link all of that in the show notes. So Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for being here. But before we
Of
go,
course.
ask all my guests the same 5
Yes.
questions, rapid fire. So, what's a life lesson from somebody maternal in your life that you think about a lot that really resonates with you?
Yeah. Yeah, so just thinking through what we talked about today, I feel like my parents really instilled a strong sense of self-efficacy in me, and I'm so grateful for that. I felt like I grew up with this assumption that I could do, or at least I could try to do anything, right? There were no limits, and we didn't have a lot of money, but we valued education really highly, and I think that's such a gift. And the life lesson that keeps bringing me back to is, again, this: sometimes we have to break in the name of becoming something stronger. You shouldn't be afraid to try these things and try to see them through.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, in your dark moments when life has gotten really loud, what is something that helps you hold on or is comforting to you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, of course, other than family and friends,
Sure.
and lucky to have all that. I think honestly, it really is this project. I feel like Held Together is the culmination of all the things I went through that didn't make sense personally at the time, and all the things I've learned as a professional. And it's the way that I feel like I can leave this behind no matter what else happens in my life. It's the most rewarding things I've ever done professionally, and that there's meaning in all the challenges, and that I've helped a small group of other women, which I hope will expand to others who read it and see themselves in it. Like, I've helped us all find that too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Something very sacred or sentimental in your home right now that that's just like you love it. You see it and it brings you joy.
This was a hard one to think about, because so many ways I could go, but I think it probably has to be these photo books that I make around New Year's every year. I'll make a photo book of the previous year with one of, computer program, dragging and dropping and putting all the photos together. And I feel like so now we have 16 of them. My older child is 16, and I've done them every year since he was born. And they're our memories. It's about shepherding our memories, right?
Yeah.
And putting them into this format where I can pass them on. We have a copy for the house and one for each of the kids and the grandparents. And I hope they'll carry them with them, like when the kids go off outside of our house as they get older, and they can look back and see all of our adventures, and then interspersed with kind of the everyday moments, from, snuggling our rescue kitties to working on a creative project or going on a long run or a hike on a new trail. Like, it's everything that kind of summarizes that year, and they can carry these forward with them to have those memories.
I love that you do that. I do that too because a mom gave me a very wise piece of advice right before my son was born. She said, "Don't let your photos just live on your phone."
Yeah.
And so that he has something physical that he will be able to hold on to. And I think I especially appreciate that bit of advice, even more so now. The photos of my mom are things I truly cherish. So if you're asking,
and it's not too late. It's not too late. Like, if people don't listen to this and think, "Oh no, I didn't start that when my child was born, so it's all lost." Like, no, if you have a teenager, like, just do a couple of some things to share and to preserve a little bit, something to talk about. And it's okay to start wherever you are.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. You have such, and that's is another thing about the book that I love, is that it's so grace filled and space.
Thank you.
I mean, like, I can't imagine you. I wish you were closer so you could be my doctor, but that you're nurturing, caring for others in your chosen profession definitely comes through in the book too. So if you're asking God, the universe, source, whatever higher belief system you have, a question and you're getting an answer, what are you wanting to know?
Yeah, this one's a little less optimistic, but it's like, what kind of world will my children live in after I'm gone? So I really worry. I worry where we're headed, and human rights and climate destabilization and science denialism and technology, like, bleeding into all these creative and sacred corners of our lives. Like, what is it going to look like? And I would just really love some reassurance that things are going to be kind of okay, and, like, we'll turn some small corners soon, and future generations will, like, they'll have the resources that they need and the wisdom, and that they will continue the work.
Same. I think I want to know that too. So what's a phrase or a quote that you love? It can be something you say all the time. It can be a swear word. It can be practical advice, whatever you're feeling.
Yeah. It's made me think of, like, I'm not opposed to swearing, but, like, it doesn't faze me. It's just, like, I'm a big believer in using the power of words, like, when they're called for. So like, I reserve powerful words for powerful moments, or, like, oh, you really need, but it got me thinking about, like, it's not so much what I say, but what I think in those kinds of moments. And it goes back to, I started saying this during medical school, and I've held on to it. So in 25 years, no soul searching during finals period. So as someone who's been to grad school for yourself as a lawyer, like you, this may resonate when you're up those middle of the night studying sessions, or even in high school, whatever it may have been, that you're, like, up having this existential crisis, like, not just how do I do this, but, like, why am I even
up at 3 a.m. reading about torts?
What am I doing? Exactly. And so I use this as a reminder: no soul searching during finals period. When you're in the thick of it, sometimes you just have to get through without a lot of reflection. Survival mode can be a valid strategy, and there'll be time to come around and process later. We can just accept that and endure.
I love that. I mean, where were you 20 years ago? That's yeah, because
Realizing this, like, just have it, like,
yeah,
I wasn't there yet either. I was having these epiphanies as well.
yeah. I love that because it's kind of we tell people a lot. I used to help people study for the bar after I had passed the bar
Oh,
myself,
nice.
and so I would tell
Yeah, yeah.
people, you know, if you're a smoker, don't quit smoking while you're studying for the bar.
Right. That's
Just
exactly it. Mm-hmm.
don't decide to make over your whole life while you're studying for the bar. Just have the bar be the thing you're
Yep.
doing at this point in time.
Absolutely.
Don't plan to lose 20 pounds too. Just like, let's maintain
Mm-hmm.
the status quo, put your head down and get done the thing you need to get done.
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for giving us the science to understand that we can try to do all the things. If you're a type A person like myself, you can take your vitamin C, you can take, you can get good rest. There's definitely things you can do to help yourself if you are experiencing loss, but knowing that your body is going to be affected, that the mental and the physical are one thing, and that there's a continuum, and that continuum can shift like the ocean. And share and putting together these stories of resilience, it's just so beautiful. And I really do hope everybody listening picks up a copy. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
And
All
take
right.
care.
Well, that's it for today. You can ache for who you were before it all changed and become someone new. Grief and growth sit at the table, passing notes when we're not looking. This tea, this time, this space together is part of your healing, and it's part of mine too. You're not broken, you're just brewing. And besties, we do not gatekeep around here. So if you heard something today that filled your emotional cup, or a girlfriend came to mind, or a friend that you think needs this information, pass this episode along to them and share. Follow and come back next Tuesday. Your seat at the table will be waiting. Follow along on Instagram at How Do I Do This Pod, and on YouTube at How Do I Do This Pod. DM me on Instagram and tell me what kind of grief you're holding right now. Seriously, I'll read everyone and will probably be the person to respond back. Tell me what you have tried that you think might help me. I'm open to trying anything that's not illegal. Your story might find its way into one of our future episodes.